This is Mind Your Body, a dance movement therapy perspective on the integration of our emotional, cognitive, physical, and spiritual aspects of our being into one more aware and whole existence.
Okay. Hello, it's Ori Krug. I'm simultaneously live on my personal profile and Dance Therapy Advocates, so feel free to watch me on either one. If you want your comments/questions to be private, come into the Dance Therapy Advocates group. And yeah. So I'll wait 20 seconds or so, and some people said they wanted to come on live, so I will just wait a moment and get some notes that I wrote out. And if you're here, say hey. I love knowing that I'm not talking to anyone, even though, you might be here during the recording, and that's totally cool, or you might not want to comment, and that's fine too. So, first want to say, yeah, it's a crazy time, and, there's not much to say. I'm sending you love and peace and all of that stuff, and I really feel it, but it's just, there's also no words to express, to say that I'm here with you, even though I'm not experiencing this transition. I've already transitioned to online a long time ago, but I'm feeling the collective anxiety and fear and all of that, so I'm with you. All right, so if you do want to say hey, leave a comment. If you have a question that's coming up now or anytime during the live, definitely put that in the comments, or maybe you have a question that will come up as I'm answering some other questions. So some people had some questions, and I'm going to expand on that. And before I get into that, I just want to share some general tips, and they might sound really simple and obvious, but I feel like it's my duty to say it, so I will say it. If you're currently had to make this quick transition from doing in-person work to now doing it online, whether it's through the computer screen or through the phone, this is especially for you. This is my intention to help you make that as smooth as possible. So the first thing, of course, is safety, right? So no matter how you're transitioning or what device you're using, we of course want to make this a really safe experience, which we always want to do anyway. The thing is, not every population is really suited for online work, and it might feel really hard to feel safe or to make that feel safe. So whatever we can do, safety is number one. And especially during this time where everything is up in the air and chaotic and stressful, and everyone's life has changed in a matter of days, you don't have to do anything groundbreaking. As you're transitioning, you don't have to bring your client to huge ahas and shifts and all that. Nothing groundbreaking. If safety is the only thing that you create, safety and familiarity, then that is good. So I just wanted to say, if you're having these high expectations of creating great transformation online or creating the same kinds of shifts you do in person, it's good to keep that down right now, because all they really need is some consistency and predictability in your work together. And then on that note, just think about if you currently work with clients and you have certain rituals that you have. Maybe it's the way that you start a session or end a session, and you can bring any of those rituals online, then that's also a good idea. Or maybe even part of those rituals or a piece of those rituals. Again, just to keep that familiarity and safety in a world of chaos and unpredictability and uncertainty right now. Hey BZ, I'm going to go by your profile name, even though I know your real name. I don't know if you want me to say it though. So yeah, those are the general things that I just wanted to say. And now I'm going to go to your comments now. And the first question that I wanted to address was, Emma, your question about working. I'm like kind of reading it as I answer it, so just bear with me for a moment. All right, so for any of you who have to transition to telephone sessions, I'm just gonna put it out there, I don't do any phone sessions. I only do sessions over the screen where I can actually see. But someone had a really good question about like, okay, what do? I work with adult survivors of domestic violence with high anxiety and trauma symptoms. I know it's not the same on the phone, it's harder to engage, and our sessions are shorter. So I would first say, like, if there is any possible way to do that work over the screen instead of the phone, like if that's at all possible, do that, because it's just so much more impactful and powerful to be able to see each other and to see each other move together and, you know, have that mirroring and reflecting and joint experience. But if that's not possible for whatever reason, then I think it would be best in terms of safety if, you know, you guide the movement experience and, you know, keeping it as consistent as possible with what you already do, or like whatever makes sense in your therapeutic relationship already, that you guide movement experiences, and then they say, like, as they're moving, they're saying out loud exactly what they're doing. So let's say you're doing a simple warm-up. They can say, all right, I'm moving my head around in a circle, and I'm looking down right now. I'm picking up my right shoulder up to my ear, and I'm releasing it back down. Like, it's really like pretty literal, like this is exactly what I'm doing right now. But for them to describe what they're doing to you, so like even though you can't see them visually, you can see them and really get as much of a visual of what they're doing. That's for you. And then for them, it's like they're not getting lost in the movement, they're not getting lost in their head, and actually they're being really, really present with the movement, because they're connecting their nonverbal experience to their verbal expression by doing that. And then as you hear what they're doing, you can either choose to expand on that, or maybe you draw out some movement metaphors, or whatever comes up naturally in the session. You know, that can be really helpful. And also just like on the therapist side, being like, you know, I hear that you're moving in this way. I'm moving with you. I'm moving my head too. And like just creating as much as possible an experience of you still moving together. And especially for high anxiety and trauma, like I would not suggest, especially over the phone, doing any kind of like guided meditation or guided imagery, because you have no idea like what they're doing on the other side of the phone. Like, and especially with high anxiety and trauma, that might feel really unsafe. If they're in a hypo-aroused state, if they're more in a frozen state right now because of all this trauma and fear that's happening collectively, and we're trying to make them still and meditate and like just close their eyes and, you know, all that stuff, then we actually might be pushing them into more of a trauma pattern, more of a trauma state. So I wouldn't suggest doing any of that, where like you want to constantly have their feedback of what they're doing and giving and like interacting as much as possible. So let me know if that was helpful. That was the biggest idea that came to me in response to that question. Let me know if you have further questions about that. And in the meantime, I will go on to the next one. And okay, so Davika and I had a little back and forth about doing sessions with children. And I know some of you, or like most of the questions are around doing sessions with children. And I'm like, I don't do sessions with children online. Part of that is just because I don't feel confident like doing sessions with just children. Like I'm not confident in my ability to keep them attentive and whatever. It's just not where I am right now. But I will say that I work with a lot of moms, and sometimes their kids do have to come into session because, life happens. And so my first suggestion was, if the parents or the caregiver can be in the session with the children, then that's a pretty cool opportunity to have them mirror together, have them join in movement together, or, again, your clients and what you generally do, whether it's short-term acute groups or sessions or kind of a more longer-term relationship, what really works, but you can help the parent or the caregiver get involved. So if that's possible, I would suggest doing that, like having them play, and maybe they have toys at home, and maybe they don't have toys. Maybe they just have like pillows and blankets, and it's like you can set up a little obstacle course, so you can guide them to set that up, and the caregiver helps them move through it and under it and swim through it or whatever. Like maybe there's a visualization of being in the ocean, or there's so many possibilities, right? I just, like, on my personal feeling is that with an adult in the room, or maybe even an older sibling who can handle this, and if it's appropriate, it's going to be a lot easier. But then for those, so Davika had asked, because of the economic status that her clients are in, there's like 5 to 8 people in 2 rooms of the shared space. So there's probably going to be different family members coming in and out of the session. And if that happens, then you want to change the structure of your session. So like when you had commented that, it brought me back to my days I worked in a therapeutic preschool for about 4 years. And kids would be coming in and out, and there would be disruptions and chaos and all of that. And same with the psychiatric hospital. So you want to start, structure your session so that it flows with people coming in and out. Maybe they're up and moving around and all of that. I'm just going to have a drink of water here. Yeah, so maybe they're what was I saying? Loosely structured. So with kids, maybe it's like, all right, we're going to put on these songs that, again, maybe it's part of your ritual. Maybe it's already part of your ritual and it's familiar, and you put on these songs and they're dancing and moving to it. And it's not like, all right, we're in a circle and we're taking turns, because that's never going to work out with different family members coming in and out. So it's about getting creative with the structure and what can flow with the disruptions. And I keep going back to this like obstacle course, or like maybe it's not obstacle course, but like kind of playground of, even if they don't have toys, maybe they just have like different objects they can play with, and it's kind of laid out in the group. In like my most chaotic children groups in the psych hospital, I remember just giving one scarf to each child, because there was just like no possibility for cohesion at all. And if they even interacted with each other, it was like war broke out. And they made their own little forts, and it was so amazing because they didn't feel safe at all. Like with the kids in the group, there was aggression and all of that. And right now, a lot of these kids, they definitely don't feel safe because not only whether they're really aware of what's going on or not, like their parents are stressed and everyone's dysregulating together and everyone is in this survival mode. And so it would be really cool if they had this opportunity to create some kind of fort or safe space with some, I'm seeing a pillow here, like a pillow or a blanket or something. And of course you want to keep this safe and like be able to see them as much as possible. But that is definitely something that can happen with like some more free-flowing structure. All right, I'm gonna check back in and see if there's any comments here. All right, I don't see any questions. Let me know if you have any questions about that. Okay, next question. I have a specific question on helping clients I have that are working moms. What online interventions are helpful related to increasing confidence or self-esteem? Excuse me. This can feel different when working face-to-face. Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty general question, so I can throw some ideas out there. Like, I don't know if you're here right now, but if you are here, maybe you can expand on like I always go to like what's what are the most pressing challenges for these working moms? So right now, what's pretty common is mom has to work from home and kids are at home too because schools are closed. So maybe the presenting issue is like, obviously less support. They're busier, they're more stressed. They have no idea what to do with the kids or they don't know how to juggle all of that. So that could be maybe that's the most pressing issue. I mean, I know you had said related to increasing confidence and self-esteem. I'm just guessing that like there's probably going to be something more pressing in relation to like the current events. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it just depends. So like taking up space, for example, increasing confidence or self-esteem, like literally helping them take up more space in the space that like the physical space they're in, expanding their bodies to take up more space, because that's a really great metaphor for for having this increased confidence and worth, right? Like I can take up more space. You can, if they're comfortable, you can include the voice, like using my voice. I'm going to speak metaphor. I'm like the queen of metaphors, so I'm going to start speaking metaphors. Stepping into your power. So like, what would that look like for you? All this stuff can be done online. And yeah, stepping into your power. How do you want to step into your power? Maybe it's like a big step. Maybe it's a strong step. Maybe it's like, I'm here and I've got a crown or whatever. Increasing confidence, self-esteem. Maybe it's increasing confidence in relationships. Maybe it's, I need to ask my partner for more help right now. If not, I'm going to drown in all this like extra tasks and stressors right now. So maybe it's doing something in relationship with you and them and trying on, what is it like to ask for more help? What would it be like to let go of needing to do everything and sharing some of that responsibility? There's so much, I work with women who are working to release their trauma and improve their relationships. And there's so much around that comes up. So, it's the things that you don't get working face to face is you don't have like that 360 space, but you can still mirror, you can still guide them to move around their space, taking up more space. You can use your voice together. You can move with them as you guide them to like use more strength in their movement. These are all examples and obviously not unique to your clients, but whatever is the intervention that's going to work for them, it works online as well. And I'm speaking screen to screen, by the way. If it's telephone, I would go back to my first answer. So, yeah. If you come back, or if you're here and you want to like ask a specific question about what their presenting challenges are, I can give some more specific ideas. All right, there were some questions more about children, and Lauren provided some awesome resources. Thank you. Yeah, Jennifer brought up billing correctly and not seeing people in the same state. That kind of, I don't use insurance, so I can't answer that. And then, okay. Yeah, and answering some more questions about children. Okay, sorry. I'm gonna read this. All right, I could use some ideas for how to reestablish during, after the inevitable disruption due to technology lapses. I'm not sure what that means. Like, are you talking about like technological, I don't know if you're here, but are you talking about like when the internet cuts out and there's a disruption and then you have to come back into session? Let me know what you mean by that, Lauren. And oh, you're only approved to have sessions over the phone with adult survivors of sexual trauma. All right, let me go to your second question. Maybe I'll understand that a little bit. Do you have other creative ideas for folks who don't have a confidential space, don't feel comfortable speaking on the phone? Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, given your population, I would say it really depends on where you're at with your process right now, with the client. So like, I'm very hesitant. I do all my work online, and I'm really intentional and hesitant. Let's say intentional. I'm really intentional about the kinds of movement experiences that I lead online to the public. I don't really do it publicly. I do it in my private Facebook group, but when I started doing it, there was one woman who was like, oh, I did your video, and she explained that she was really triggered, and it was a movement video. It was a guided movement exploration, that she was really triggered, but she also wasn't someone that I was working with. She wasn't a client of mine. And so that's understandable. Like, we didn't have already that foundation of how can she have safety or go back to safety in her body? Is this client able to self-regulate? Because I have creative ideas for people who won't be able to, who basically have to do it on their own, maybe, if they don't want to speak on the phone. But it goes back to the first thing, is it safe for them to do that? So I would suggest using, depending on each client, what you already know as their strengths in movement, and I'm guessing you're talking about through movement. What are their strengths? And is there anything that feels check in with yourself? If you're they could do this, check in with yourself and just kind of gauge, is that going to be something that's going to be safe for them? What do you do when the call drops to pick up again? Oh, okay. I was I saw Lauren there, and then never mind. I got confused as I thought this was Lauren Harrison's question, but it's Lauren Rose. Gotcha. Yeah, thank you for clarifying. Are you talking about a telephone call or a online screen call? Either way, before you start the session, like before you really get started, it can be something. Now, I don't know if, before I get into that, like, I don't know if as you're all transitioning to online work, do you have a new contract? Like, do you have a new something that lays out like, hey, you know, this is the nature of our calls. It will happen over the phone or it'll happen over Zoom. Because we're meeting over the internet, the calls might drop out. You know, I don't know if like there are new contracts being created for this, or if you're in private practice, if you're making additions, but I would definitely add it to a contract. Like, this might happen, and then you decide, like, if it's your internet that drops out, you know, what's going to happen? What should they expect? What's the protocol? If it's their internet that drops out and then they can't come back for the rest of the session, what happens then? And for those of you working privately, you can make that decision on your own. For those of you working for other employers, you probably want to ask, because, you know, if you only meet for 20 minutes and the person drops off the internet for the rest of the session, can you still bill, or, you know, all that stuff. So first I would have a protocol set in place, and then I would mention it at the beginning of each session. At this point, I don't mention the beginning of my sessions because, like, our clients already know, basically. But you can say, all right, if the call drops, we'll meet back here, like, we'll try for 5 minutes and we'll come back. If we can't come back, we'll try the phone. Maybe that's the next step. Just decide your protocol, make sure they know it. And then reestablishing, so something that I like to do, because usually if someone drops out, it's like only for a few minutes. If we're in the middle of a movement process, I will keep moving. Like, whatever we're doing, I'm going to continue it, and then when they come back, I'll say, oh, like, I was holding the movement experience for you, and then just helping them get back into it. Like, all right, so let's get back into it. Like, or, you know, you always want to see where they're at, and like maybe they're frazzled because they were trying to get back online. But I like to stay in the experience and hold it for them, unless, you know, it's been a really long time and I have to go and check, like, what's going on and are we meeting somewhere else. And then, like, if you're on a call that's just right, and it's just not smooth at all, that's pretty hard to have any kind of flow in your session. So, like, if that's happening, I would already go to plan B of something I do that probably can't do is we go to Facebook video because it uses less bandwidth. So if the internet is slow, the video is more, like, usually better to work on Facebook video. Or we go to FaceTime, but again, you depending on who you're working with, and, you know, you might not want to or be able to do that because that's like your private number. So I hope that was helpful, that answered your questions. And you do have sessions over the phone, so a lot of the stuff that I just said about face-to-face, like Zoom to phone, doesn't really apply, but maybe that was helpful for someone else. And then, over the phone is like, you can only do so much. If you lose your connection over the phone, or if it's a choppy connection over the phone, if they can, just find a space that has better service, and then, like, try the suggestions about, like, if you get disconnected and then come back, just try to hold the space for them as much. I find it's, like, really just reassuring for people to, you know, where they're like, oh no, what was I saying, or what was I doing, and I make sure I remember exactly what they were doing, so it's like, oh, okay, wow, like, she was really paying attention and listening, and we're picking up right where we left off. So sometimes that in itself is therapeutic, is that I know exactly where we left off. All right, let me check and see if there's any other questions. All right, I don't see any other questions. So if you have another question right now, comment below. And while I take a sip of water, I'm going to see if there's anything else that's important to say. I don't know if anyone's doing group work or if like all the questions that I answered was about one-on-one, but let me know if you have additional questions and I'll see if I can answer it in a comment. If not, I'll come back when I can to make another video. But definitely let me know if this was helpful, or if there's like something different that you're needing, maybe. Okay, cool, there's questions coming in. If I cannot see the whole body on the screen, what can I do? So it's pretty unlikely to see their entire body on the screen. So basically, depending if you're like, if you guys are standing up, even if you're sitting, you can give some tips on how to, like, if you're not satisfied with how you're seeing them, or even back up, like you can reflect back to them like, oh, I can only see your head and I'd love to see more of you. Can we, not because they're sitting like this, because I'm just showing you. Can we adjust the camera a little bit more? Maybe you can move back, or, make this kind of a dance, make it part of the process, because this is so new for them. So, be in charge of that, but also like make it part of the dance of like, okay, let's see what happens when we move back. How does that feel? All right, great, I can see more of you. So you can adjust and just make that part of the process, and maybe even ask, how much do you want to be seen today? What I do personally is I just go ahead and say, like, if I can hardly see them, or if I can only see a little bit of them, I will ask for them to change their angle, or move back or something, because I wanted to see as much as possible. But yeah, you're not going to see all of them most of the time. So let's say we're moving with our feet. We're sitting and we're moving with our feet. I have them describe to me what's going on for them in their bodies, or what they're doing exactly with the lower part of their body. So again, it goes back to the very beginning of this video, where it's like, okay, I'm rolling my foot around, and I'm rolling it around towards the right, and now I'm switching it and I'm rolling it towards the left. And so they're basically telling you what they're doing so you can see them as much as possible. And then in general, I also just, I trust that I will see what I need to see, that they're showing me whatever they need to show me. And then there's also things that like you can pick up on too, like if they're kind of like, wow, word blank. If they're doing something like this, you can, and you don't see them, like maybe they're rubbing their thighs, but you can kind of see this motion. You can ask, you can ask and say, like, what are you doing right now with your hands? And it's going to be a little bit more, depending on your client, like it can be a little bit more confrontational. Of like, I'd love to see you as much as possible, and I see that you're making a movement right now. What is it that you're doing? Can you describe it to me? What are the main differences in the structure of an online session versus face-to-face? Well, it depends really on who you're working with. Is it individual? Is it a group structure? Or is it a group session? So it's a pretty generic question. Like if you have something more specific, I can answer more specifically, but it really depends who you're working with, because the structure, like we don't structure a session based on if it's online or in person. We as dance therapists, we structure a session based on, okay, where are they at right now, right? Maybe they're really, really like high energy and anxious or whatever. We don't base, we meet them where they're at, and we jump in and we intervene based on what's going on for them at every given moment, and none of that changes online. The structure changes based on who you're working with, and is it group, is it one-on-one, and what they're presenting. I guess my go-to is just also tuning into my own body. Like, that doesn't change because I have so many years experience of doing that in person, where I tune into my own body. That lets me know what the client's experiencing, or what they may be experiencing, or what they may be needing at the moment. So tuning into my own body, that hasn't changed whether I'm online or in person with a client. And again, the main difference is like, we're not in a 3D space together, but we can still move together, face to face, mirroring. We can move around excuse me, we can move in our individual spaces together, like parallel experiences, right? And we can still use like the floor or sitting or standing up. So it's not really about like the structure online versus in person. It's just like, what are some of the limitations, and how do we work around it? But in terms of like how to facilitate and how to intervene, a lot of this stuff stays the same. And I'm speaking really for also for clients that it's safe to do online work with, which I would bet that in the current crisis, that's not always going to be the case. So I did talk about some structure stuff a little bit earlier on in the video. I will, once I'm done with this, I will map out the questions. But where I talked about structure was in response to the question about like, what happens if there's a lot of people in the house or in the residence, and they're coming in and out. And I talked about some ideas how to change structure based on that. But again, that wasn't based on online or in person. That was based on what's the situation at home. All right, any other questions? Well, if you have any other questions, leave comments, and I will do my best to get back to you. And let me know if this was helpful. I'm reading comments, I'm not just blank faced right. Okay. This is very helpful, thinking of groups that I initially wasn't thinking of. Great, awesome. And if you want to share, like, I think it would be great if we, maybe we keep commenting on this thread or my original thread of like, oh, I tried this and it really worked well with this population. And I think this is like a great time to come together and share ideas. And obviously, again, every client is different, every therapeutic relationship is different. But just sharing some ideas will spur some other ideas for us. And then in terms of the limitations to take into account on a dance therapy online session, so go back to when I end this live video, go back to the very beginning, because I talked about safety limitations and especially considering what's going on right now. And then kind of throughout the video talked about, well, I think we mentioned it, like tech stuff can happen where we fall out, the connection is choppy, or it falls out. We talked about that. And then safety really is like, I just play it safe right now until you feel confident, until you feel confident as the therapist to facilitate deeper explorations and all of that. Play it safe, play on their strengths, on the client's strengths. Take it slow in terms of session development. So again, we're not trying to make great transformations here. We just want to keep things stable and predictable and as familiar as possible, because what's going on in the world is already uncertain, and transitioning to online work is again another change. So yeah, I talk a little bit about that at the beginning. And I'm gonna go now, and I'll come back to any other questions that you might have. Thanks so much for asking and for contributing to the discussion. And the more specific questions you have, like about anything, about interventions, about whatever, the more specifically I can answer them. So, yeah. Thanks for joining, and good luck, and be kind to yourself. And that's another thing about looking at the client. If you're doing online face-to-face sessions, that's a limitation where it's like, if you want to look at them in the eyes, you got to look at the camera. But then if you want to see them, you got to look at the screen. So you kind of have to switch between the two. So right now I'm attempting to look into your eyes and say, be kind to yourself and take care of yourself through this transition. And of course, really importantly is, like, as always, the level that you take care of yourself is going to greatly impact everything above all else, how you get to take care, or your capacity to take care of your clients. So yeah, be kind, nurture yourself, nourish yourself, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.